All right, everybody, welcome this afternoon to our afternoon online webinar from our series this week. And this is our last one of the week, except for tomorrow morning is our coffee and conversations. And I encourage everybody to show up for that. It's going to be a great time. I'm going to be drinking lots of coffee. And you're welcome to join me in that. Um, tonight, this long week, right? This afternoon, we're going to be looking at specifically Study Island, and we have our special presenter, Edmentum, here with us. Joining us from Edmentum is Jen, who's an educational consultant, and then we also have Mike, and he works directly with a lot of you at your schools. So they're going to be here, just kind of help us dive into a little bit of Study Island, and then give you some resources to go a little bit deeper, I think, at the end as well. Just a few reminders for you. Have everybody muted, and we're going to leave it that way until the Q&A at the end, and this will just keep feedback from happening throughout the presentation, so our presenters don't get interrupted by any weird noises and stuff like that. If you do have any questions, though, as we go, please make sure to utilize the chat feature in the bottom and just post your questions and conversation. Me and Becky and Aaron will be helping to field those as they come in and answer them as we can. And I'm sure Jen and Mike will also be chiming in as necessary and needed. This session is, of course, going to be recorded for future use, so you can access it later. If you do not feel comfortable with your face being recorded, you can turn your camera off, but one of the goals of these is to build community and human interaction. So if you are comfortable leaving your camera on, leave it on for the whole session because it gives you that kind of connectedness and that feeling. Today's session will be presented in a presentation format with a Q&A session following it. And at the conclusion of the webinar, we will place a feedback form in the chat for you to complete. This will help us direct our conversation to the right place in our future offerings, as well as give us some feedback on how we did. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Jen and let her kick things off. All right, Jen, take it away. And you're probably muted still. So you might...
Yep, I just unmuted myself. Thank you, Scott, and thanks to Scott, Becky, and Aaron for inviting us on today. I wanted to introduce that in addition to myself, Jen Caldwell, I'm an education consultant, as Scott said, and Mike Zwanch, one of our partnership managers. We also have Beth Irvy on the call with us today, and she's another partnership manager that works with some of the districts in your IU. So we're happy to join you today, and I recognize that some of you may be teachers or administrators from districts who already use Study Island. So your purpose in today might be to get a little bit more information about how specifically to use Study Island during this period. Whereas there may be others of you who are who have heard that Study Island is opening up for the next few months and will be available. And Mike can give you more information about that end of things, but you might be here just to learn a little bit more about what Study Island is and how you can use it. So I'm going to, over the next half hour, really just take you through multiple aspects of Study Island, thinking both along the lines of making this an introduction for some, as well as thinking about how you can use Study Island during this time period for others. And with that being said, hopefully you all can see my screen. I won't belabor who I am and where I live and everything, but I am in New Jersey, but I do work with the Blast IU, and I've worked with several of the districts in the IU for a variety of different purposes over the last year, and happy to be joining you today. So I have an ambitious schedule for us, or an ambitious agenda over the next, well, 25 minutes now. I thought what I would do is just introduce Study Island and have some thought around how can we use it during the next few weeks specifically. I'll talk about the main purpose of Study Island, but then get into how we can use it. I'll show you things, not really too much time on class setup, but just taking a look at practice sessions and the resources that you have there, built tests that can be offered, as well as group sessions, which typically are done in a live classroom setting, but through the magic of things like Zoom, can also be done at home. And then finally, we'll take a look at how to use Study Island data in Sensei. Sensei is what I find sometimes an undiscovered piece of Study Island, but especially during this time when you're looking potentially just at remediation, practice, enrichment, maintenance of what's already been done. Sensei can be a great tool to help identify some of those skills to go back to. And of course, during this time, we want to know what resources are available. So I'll wrap things up before the Q&A just by showing you all of the various resources that Edmentum has made available to support you, your colleagues, your educators during this time. So to get things started, Study Island, just for those of you who may not have used it up until this point, is really meant to be a practice and assessment tool. Students can either self-select topics or teachers can select topics. Everything is standards aligned and specifically Pennsylvania standards aligned. With everything except kindergarten and first grade, you're going to see that everything is tied directly into the Pennsylvania standards. And while we don't need to worry about PSSAs or keystones anymore for this year, everything is also aligned with that specific kind of practice in mind. And so everything that you're going to see, you can feel confident as you're using it with your students that it is aligned with what Pennsylvania focuses on. So for some of you who may be familiar with Study Island, some of these terms will look familiar. There's really three main ways of using Study Island in practice with your students. Practice sessions are what teachers are most familiar with. And in just a few minutes, I'm going to transition into a Study Island account to show you, for those of you who might not be familiar with it, what that looks like. But practice sessions essentially start off with a brief, sometimes optional lesson for students. Teachers have the ability to make those optional or not. And then students transition into a series of practice questions. And those can be done with just the students, answering the questions as is, or they can do a game mode where they get a little reward after each correct question with a little game to play. And I'm just curious, can we just see by a show of hands, how many of you are familiar with Study Island when it comes to practice sessions? Either you've used them yourselves or your teachers have used them. All right, so probably about half the group then. All right, so for those of you who aren't familiar, I'll go into Study Island in just a few minutes and show you what that looks like. The second thing that you see on the screen are the group sessions. This is another undiscovered, in my opinion, area of Study Island. The best way to describe group sessions is if you know what Kahoot is. If you're familiar with Kahoot, where there's questions on the screen and students answer individually on their devices, that's essentially what group sessions is. There's a couple different modes. There's one that's very much teacher-led and teacher-paced. There's ones that are more competitive, like a Kahoot or a Quizlet Live. And I have seen schools posting on Twitter that they have been using group sessions through a form like Zoom to still be able to do group sessions even though they don't have everyone all together. It's a nice opportunity if you're able to gather your students for some synchronous learning. Group sessions is a great opportunity to have some of that teacher guidance and make it fun and interactive for the students as well. And then finally, we have built tests. Oh, and I'm seeing Jamie mentioned that students really love group sessions. So Jamie, that's great. I would love to hear if you do try it via Zoom. I would love to hear your results. That would be great to find out how that works. So thanks for sharing that. And then finally, we have built tests. The practice sessions, built tests as opposed to practice sessions. Practice sessions are really about students going in and it pulls from a bank of questions and they get feedback after every question. Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? It's a nice formative assessment piece. You as the educator can also create built tests. And built tests are an opportunity to hand select topics, hand select questions, and really put together more of a summative piece to provide to your students. And it's a nice check-in. It's a nice way to identify some specific areas of strength and weakness that you might want to hone in on. And as I'm recognizing that some of you might be administrators, some of you might be supervisors, and some classroom teachers, built tests can be created at the district or school level and shared out with everyone, or they can be created by individual classroom teachers and just shared out with their students. So those are the three main ways to use Study Island, and each of them, as we're thinking about how we want to engage students over the next few weeks. Practice sessions, certainly you can either just let students self-select. They just have access to it and they can go in and practice whatever they want. Or you can have them, you can go in and create specific assignments. So thinking about if you wanted to go in and target a particular area for review, you would create a practice session assignment. Doesn't have to be for the whole class. You could differentiate here, providing an assignment, one assignment for one small group of kids and a separate assignment for another group. But you have that opportunity to really target what students need. And a question came in about the built tests. The question is, did you say there is not immediate feedback for student response like there is for practice sessions? And that is correct. Typically with a built test, it's going to behave more like a regular assessment would be. Let's say there's 10 questions on the built test. Students would answer all 10. They would not know if they were right or wrong until they got to the end. Once they submit it, it would give them a score and a breakdown of the questions that they got right and wrong. So it's really more of an opportunity for you as a teacher or an educator. If you're looking to create a built test, it's more that you may want to have a varied practice, because you could have a built test that has 10 different questions from 10 different standards on it. Or you can have a built test where you're specifically hand-picking the questions. You can decide if you want multiple choice, multiple select, or other tech-enhanced items. When you're creating a built test, you can filter for depth of knowledge. So you may want something that's just depth of knowledge 1, that's pretty straightforward for students, or you might want to challenge them and go a little bit more in depth and craft a built test that's depth of knowledge 2 or 3. Typically in Study Island, you're not going to find any that are level 4 depth of knowledge. Just the nature of that type of work doesn't lend itself to Study Island. All right, did I see there was another question that came in? No. All right. So what I'd like to do at this point is go ahead and transition into Study Island itself. So let me make sure that I've got the right screen showing here for you. What you should all see now, it has my name at the top actually, Jennifer Caldwell, but this is a Study Island account. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, this is what it looks like. And where teachers would start off, and those of you who are already familiar with Study Island, bear with me for a minute. But for those of you who are new, teachers would start off by creating a class. You have the ability to either batch upload students or to integrate with something like Clever or ClassLink to be able to put all of your students into Study Island. And then teachers would create classes. And through their classes is how they could push out assignments. I mentioned before that everything is Pennsylvania standards aligned. So under Pennsylvania programs is where you would find all of the topics that we have. Now, some of you may have access to some parts of Study Island, but your district might not. You might just use it for math, let's say. We are, and I'll let Mike and or Beth talk about this as I begin to wrap up, we are opening things up. So if you have access, let's say, just to math now, but you would like to open this up to your English, your science, your social studies teachers, we can work with you to expand your licenses. And Mike, shake your head no if I'm wrong, but that's no charge? Yeah, okay, at no charge. And then if you're not using Study Island at all, we can also work with you to extend some free access while we're going through this situation. But in any case, what it looks like for students is, and this I just happened to pull up in 8th grade math here, and so these are all of the domains and the topics that students would have available, along with the aligned standards and eligible content. So teachers would be able to really pick and choose and target. Again, if your district is focused right now on just maintenance, remediation, teachers can target those skills. If educators choose to move on with instruction, within each study island topic, there is a lesson. The lesson, some of our lessons are mostly text-based, but you can see with this one, we have begun more and more having video-based lessons. And this can be something that if a teacher was setting up an assignment, they can require the student, and this is something that's newer for those of you who have used Study Island before, they can require the student to view the lesson. Or if they wanted to set up something like a Zoom, the teacher could even use this as a base for their own live instruction, but use this lesson in that way. So it can either be the students accessing the lesson on their own or with the teacher. And the teacher also has the option to simply make the lesson optional, especially if it's something that's review. If the teacher wants to go in and just say, you know, hey, if you feel like you need a refresher, it's there, but you don't have to. So that's the lesson itself. Then there's flashcards that are available for many of our topics. So again, a nice just practice for the students. They have a flashcard and they have that opportunity to test themselves. This might be fun, something fun to pull in a sibling or a parent to do the flashcards together. And then of course the meat of Study Island, which are the practice sessions themselves. And so students, after each question, if they get it right or wrong, and I'm making a guess here, in this case, Taco the Crab popped up to say, job well done, I got it correct. And I have an explanation whether or not I got it wrong. I can view that explanation. I know one of the concerns right now is students' accessibility. As you're thinking about your special education students using this, what accommodations are available to them? And so in this practice session itself, we do have some available highlighters, but there's also a readability tool. So students can choose for any of these questions to have the question read aloud to them simply by pressing play. If I were to do it now, I don't think my settings are set for you to be able to hear my computer audio, but that would be available. And so it gives students that functionality to be able not only to read what's on the screen, but have it read to them as well. So I'll pause here as I see some questions have come in. All right, yes, so making the lesson required. Absolutely, I can definitely show you that. So when I'm going to set up a new assignment for students, I can do it from a couple different places. I can do it from the class manager, which I showed you once a teacher sets up a class, they have that available to them. And I can also do it from the teacher page. Just under My Assignments, create a practice and instruction assignment. So I go through the basics, I give my assignment a name. I can choose specific dates. And right now, I know each of your districts are doing something different. My own two teenagers, my children here in New Jersey, they have required assignments that are due every single day by 2 p.m. Some of you might have something similar in your districts, or you might have just this is optional, or you have an extended period of time. So you can choose to enforce the dates of your assignment or not. You can just leave that open-ended. But once I get to the assignment options, here's where I can choose to make something required for students. So I select my grade level, I select my topic, and once I get to, it's loading, once I get the topics loaded, I have a few options here. Let's say I want them to do theme or central idea in literature. I can choose under the column Assign Lessons to hit Yes. Now what this does, it assigns it, but it doesn't force the student to do it. What you will see in the assignment report that follows is you'll just see a check mark. If they did the lesson, it'll be checked off. If they didn't do the lesson, it won't be checked off. If you want to force them to do the lesson first, then up here at the top, you'll see Enforce the Resource Order. And that's where you would click Yes, and then whatever order you choose. Maybe you want the flashcards to be optional, so maybe you put those at the end. So it would be the lesson, and then the practice, and then the flashcards. But if you enforce the resource order and hit yes for that, they have to do the lesson first. They cannot do the practice until they've done the lesson. So that's how you would enforce it. Or just even if you didn't enforce the order, but just assigned it, this way it would just give you some visibility into which students did do that lesson or not. And absolutely, I'm seeing a tip here from Mike. Stay consistent with your naming conventions. Makes life easier when you're naming your assignments, for sure. Give it a date, give it a clear topic. If you're not sure, usually giving it a name is the first thing that you have to do. But if you're not sure what you want your assignment to be until you create it, you can always skip to step 2 first and then go back to step 1 to give it a name. So that's an option. All right, some great questions coming in so far. All right, now if I wanted, and let me just go back to the teacher page here. I mentioned before those group sessions. And typically these would be things that are done in the classroom, but like I said, through Zoom, if you have all of your students on at one time, you can still do a group session. And I'll just highlight the 3 different types that we have. And I'll start with challenge in the middle here. Challenge is most like Kahoot. So if you're familiar with Kahoot, the question is on the screen, the students answer on their devices. It's fun, it's fast-paced, points are awarded, there's nicknames, it's competitive, and it can be a lot of fun, especially as a review for skills that you feel everyone has a pretty good handle on. So if you were setting this up in a Zoom session, all your students would be logged into their own devices at home, and you would share your screen so that they could see your screen to be able to see that question and see those answer choices. And of course, you would be able to see in real time all of their responses. Checkpoint mode, the one to the left here, this is similar to Kahoot in that the question is on the screen and the students are answering on their devices, but this one is pretty straightforward and a little bit more for instructional use. So let's say you have a topic that students are just learning, or it's one that you know prior to leaving for I don't want to call it a break, but leaving for this homeschool experience that you know they were struggling with, you could use the checkpoint mode, and it takes question by question, you control the pacing, and it's not a race to answer questions first. It's just every student puts in their answer when they feel that they're ready for it. And you could take all the time in the world to break down the question, answer on your own time, etc. Finally, race mode. The only thing on the teacher screen is the leaderboard. Students are answering questions at their own pace. It all works together. Oh, and I see Mike's comment, appropriate nickname too. All of the nicknames for the challenge or the race are chosen from a bank. We don't let kids come up with their own nicknames. But the race mode students are all just answering at their own pace. Whoever finishes the fastest with the most correct comes out on top. Now I see a question from Abby about, do these work with ELA? And that is an excellent point. One option that you have is you can create a built test first and then use that built test as the questions for your group session. And I would highly recommend that for ELA. I would say challenge and race mode work best if you are Oh, and I'm seeing the comment about the creative nicknames. Challenge and race mode work best for ELA, more on the grammar-related topics, where it might be questions on parts of speech or sentence structure. I think if you're doing something literature or informational text-based, those can be tough because it is a lot of reading. But if you create a built test first, you can go in and pick and choose questions that don't have a lot of reading first. All right, and I know our time is quickly ticking away, so let me just show you quickly the built test library. And essentially what you're able to do here is create your own tests. You pull from our bank of questions, and these are all ones that have been created in the past. And essentially you handpick. You can have a nice review. Perhaps you want to create a built test just on the topics that you covered in the last month in your classroom, just to see where students are before moving on. And so you can create a built test that has one or more questions per topic and push that out to students. You simply create it as an assignment. It doesn't have a lesson. As I mentioned before, they don't get feedback after every single question, but it's a nice way for you to gather some data on where your students are for any given topic or topics. And let me just take this question, and then I want to show you one more thing. Yes, and as Mike is commenting in, you can share these. So you can create these at the district or the school level and share them out. And you can even share them with your colleagues for those of you who are teachers. All right, the last thing I want to show you is Sensei. And Sensei is the second choice on your Study Island menu. And what it does is it's a nice dashboard to see the practice that's been done so far in Study Island. And this will be especially helpful for those of you who have already been using Study Island this year, because as we see each tile here for math, each of these tiles represents a Study Island skill or topic. So I'm able to see anything that's green with a star represents the fact that every student in my class mastered or earned the blue ribbon for that topic. Everyone got at least 70% or above. Green means that more than half got that earned that blue ribbon or got 70% or above. Blue means maybe not enough students in my class to really have an indicator. And then anything that's red tells me that that's a topic where less than half of my students earned the blue ribbon. So I can click on this and see exactly who those students are, and I can filter just so I see those students who didn't earn the blue ribbon, and I can create an assignment right from Sensei for these students. So I can go in, here's all the students, I just give it a name, it automatically will be based on the topic that they need. And so when you're thinking about if your approach during this time is going to be just remediation and maintenance, Sensei is a great go-to to identify where are those skills where my students need some more practice. Either the ones that are red, meaning more than 50% of my students tried it and didn't earn the blue ribbon, or it could be for anything that's blue. That means not everyone in the class has done that particular topic yet. And so I might go back and assign just to those students who haven't done it. So Sensei is a nice dashboard just to be able to identify, again, for those of you who have already been using it this year, it's a great go-to as you're thinking about next steps for assigning topics to your students in the next few weeks. I just want to wrap up, and then I'll see if Mike wants to add anything else with the resources that are available to you. Some of you already have been using Study Island, and it is something that you're already familiar with. You're just thinking about using it in a new way. For others of you, it's brand new. And so what we're offering in terms of support right now, and as I turn things over for Q&A, I'll copy and paste these into the chat. But this first link here that we have, this Getting Started with Study Island, this takes you to a page that provides several on-demand webinars, as well as links to regular office hours. if you just have a question about Study Island, you can join our office hours. We're offering them every day at 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. You can just log on, and one of either myself or one of my colleagues are available just to answer a question. In addition, this Padlet link, this is a website that I've set up with user guides, quick how-tos, and just a variety of Study Island resources. Our Help Center, this purple Help Center button appears in Study Island itself, and you can click on there for a variety of different support topics. And then, of course, our customer support, which is available during normal business hours, and they can support you live on the phone with anything that you need. All right, well, that was a whirlwind tour of Study Island. And so, Mike, I don't know if you want to just say a word or two, or Beth, about how we can support those who aren't already using it, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Oh, wait. Hold
Do
on.
you need to unmute Mike?
Okay, Mike should be able to unmute himself now.
Okay, there we go. Everyone can hear me?
Yep.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for jumping on this webinar. As Jen told you that are on the call, Beth Irvy and I, Beth is down there in the red. Beth Irvy and I are two of the account managers, and the way we're broken up in Blast is basically I handle the larger schools, Beth handles the smaller schools. So, you know, we're extending an offer for Study Island due to the school closure. We're basically giving access to all the licenses for free for the core four. As Jen initially stated, we're tightly aligned to Pennsylvania, except in grades K and 1, and that's aligned to the national core. I know I've had several conversations with some of my districts that I deal with that they have asked me to extend the content library, so they would use just, for example, math. And they asked me to open it up for the other content areas as well. So if you're not an administrator on this call and you know that you use one piece of Study Island or one content library in Study Island, please go back and share with your administration that if you're looking for something to be a support while we're off, we are extending that offer for all grade levels. And as you can see, there's a lot of supports built in place as well. Beth, do you want to add anything to what I've said?
I would just add that applies to whether you have Study Island currently in your district or not. So even if you don't have any Study Island right now, we can get you set up with access for as many students as you want to use it with. So.
And the last thing, I know this is specific to Study Island, and I know that Scott and Becky, we've shared a couple links with them. We have a whole page, a homepage dedicated to school closures and e-learning, and Study Island isn't the only thing that we're offering. So I encourage you to maybe push that out to your admin who may not be on this call, or even look at it yourself. And again, we want to support you guys as best as we can throughout these uncharted waters.
Mm-hmm. And actually, the link, I shared both the resource links in chat, and the one that's the first one, the Getting Started with Study Island, actually takes you to a targeted spot on that page, but that's really the full page. If you were to scroll up or down, you'll see those additional resources that Mike was mentioning.
Great. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for sharing, Jen and Mike and Beth.
Mm-hmm.
So before, we're going to open it up for general questions to them, for anyone who wants to stick around and ask those questions. But I wanted to share a few things before we did that. So in the chat, I'm pasting a few links. And there is our feedback form there, and we would encourage anyone who attended the day to fill that out. It gives us good feedback on the direction and how you thought things went, as well as there's also a suggestion form for planning for the future, so we can offer more things that you would want to participate in. And I want to highlight two things here just briefly. Tomorrow is our coffee and conversations. Again, everybody's invited to sit in on that and bring any topic you want to discuss, and we will go from there. And then, as a preview for next week, we are adding some content area specific sessions next week at 11 o'clock on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They're not advertised anywhere or posted anywhere, but we are offering early literacy one, a math based one, and then a transition one for those 11 to 11:30, I think, is the time slot for them. They're going to be going up on our website later today, so you can see descriptions and stuff. But that's kind of like your sneak peek for showing up today, along with the regular sessions we're doing next week as well. So with that in mind, please fill out the forms. The Edmentum team is going to stick around, and everyone, you can unmute yourselves and talk to them if you have specific questions. They would be more than happy to, I think, help you out over the next like 10-15 minutes. So, okay. Well, thank you all for coming out, and have a great afternoon.
All right, so thanks everyone. If you don't have any questions, you can feel free to drop off, but certainly as Scott invited you, if you have additional questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
Hey, there's one thing I'll say, because I think there's a couple special education teachers on here as well. Keep in mind that if you have Study Island, or if you plan on trying to implement Study Island, that if you have the ELA content library, it's not like you just have ELA 4th grade. You have the entire content library, right? So I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out. So if you have a 4th grade kiddo that may be struggling in a specific skill, well, you could go into 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade content